Hey guys, Spray and Pray here, and welcome to another Victoria 2 tutorial series. Today we're going to be talking about colonization. Now, colonization is one of the biggest parts of Victoria 2. It's like what you kind of prepare for pretty much the entire game, just depending on what nation you are. Like if you're going to be one of the great powers, like you're going to be definitely looking at trying to colonize as soon as you can. And even as a secondary power, making colonies and having those can really give you that little boost that you need to become a great power later on in the game. So, we're going to talk about colonization. It's in the pop demand mod, and the only reason why I'm using that is because I have a lot more save games from Germany and Italy that we can go and look at, as opposed to the vanilla game where I don't think I have any save games at all, and even if I do, it's just like the United States ones from a long time ago. So we're going to be doing it in pop demand mod. There's not very much difference between vanilla colonization and pop demand mod colonization. One of the big differences, and pretty much the only one, is that the technology for colonization is researched at a little bit later for the vanilla game, as opposed to Pop Demand. You can colonize a little bit earlier. However, the way it works in Pop Demand is it's actually staggered a little bit, and in the vanilla game you can just colonize everything at once. And we'll go over that more as soon as we get into it. Let's load up some of my saves. Alright, so this is us as Italy in 1878, and as you can see, no one has started really. This is kind of how the Pop Demand mod is laid out exactly at the beginning. There's almost zero difference, except for just a few extra countries down here. But like I said, it's very similar the way colonization works, and that doesn't really affect it. So right now we're unable to send expeditions to places with life rating of 10. So that's normal, but then there's some places here that have like life rating 15. So we can't even do life rating 15. And what's really nice about the Heart of Darkness expansion is I think that when they added that, they actually show you which technologies you need to start actually going in and colonizing. Now, the four things you're going to need is, it's actually ideas, which are invented after you, or sorry, these are inventions rather, after you research the technology. So, like for instance, right now, since we have military plans, and we got the invention of this attitude that gives us extra stuff. Military statistics will give us a base chance every month of 5% to discover these things. So you actually have to research those, and it can be very difficult, especially for nationalism, imperialism. It's the Dark Continent is like, I think, the biggest one. So first of all, this is the one where you have to wait till 1900, and that's kind of like when all hell breaks loose and you get minus 5% more life rating. So it's this. So you want to get nationalism and imperialism as soon as possible. You want to get medicine as soon as possible because you need the malaria medicine, which is right here. That gives you extra life rating. So you need those two things. You also need an army. You need the indigenous garrisoning from the machine gun, or the breech-loaded rifles. But as you see here, it actually requires, to get indigenous garrisoning, like to even have a chance above 0% to discover it, you need to have already invented machine guns and main armament. Now, main armament is another difficult one to get because it's in the Navy tech tree. So there's a lot of technologies that you need to get, guys, in order to start colonizing. And so it's kind of important from day one for you to start focusing on the things that you're going to need. As you can see here, and this is a problem that I actually run into later on, where I actually colonize a bit later than most other people, is because I don't think I actually ever get main armament, because we stop here. I think we stopped at weapon platforms. But anyways, main armament is required pretty much for you to get the indigenous garrisoning from the breech-loaded rifles. And I mean, it gets very easy after. So like, see, 1880 is when the first round of colonization starts usually in Pop Demand mod, and you can start colonizing those 15 life rating areas. So you want to research all of these things as fast as possible. So let's just go over it one more time so you guys know what's up. So we're going to be wanting to go for first medicine, that's the lowest one. Then culture, you're also going to want to get the nationalism and imperialism. And in Navy, you're going to want to grab main armament. And in Army, you're going to want to grab breech-loaded rifles, bolt action, and machine guns. So that's how you get the right amount of technology to give you the correct life rating to actually colonize. Since, of course, now we don't have the right amount of colonization points. So let's take a look at how colonization power or colonial power actually works. So this is the most confusing thing that I never was able to wrap my hand around for like the longest time after Hearts of Darkness came out, and I don't know why. I mean, I kind of understand why they did it. It kind of makes it a little bit more fair how the colonies get divided, but it's still kind of a pain in the ass, and I sort of prefer the way they use national focuses in House Divided, but that's beyond this. I'm just trying to explain to you how colonization works in the latest version of the game. So these points are kind of like the other kind of points here. It's very much tied towards your navy. Everything about your navy is what gives you colonial power. Also some technology. So the biggest thing that gives you colonial power is navy bases. And as you can see, all these little green striped areas that are on here, if you're not full screen you probably can't see, but just trust me, there's a lot. Every single province you need to have a navy base built and upgraded. So as far as you can get these things to go, like see this one down here, I was a bad player. I did not upgrade these navy bases even though they were like light green. Anyways, but you know, the more navy bases you have, the more naval limit you have, and the more colonial points in particular you'll get, which is kind of the most important thing about having colonial and navy bases, is getting those colonial points. Another thing that'll give you colonial points is actually building ships. And I don't know, can you actually, it doesn't actually even show you when you cover over it. The only way to actually tell how much it's going to give you is going to be when it like whenever you poop out a ship, you gotta exactly see. So the thing is having a lot of ships, yeah, that's great. That increases your colonial points, but only up to a certain limit. As you can see, you have your navy force limit. If you start to go over your navy force limit, it'll actually decrease the amount of colonial points you have to use. So if this number ever turns red, you're kind of in trouble. Alright, so let's do a little bit of a quick recap to make sure that you got all that. So, what's the first thing about colonial power? Well, it's what you use to actually make colonies. Every time you click this button here, it's going to cost you a bunch of colonial power. Usually I think it's about 50, so it's kind of expensive, and I mean, we're Italy, so we have a lot of ports, so it's not that big a deal. But it's going to cost you points every time you try to make a colony. And then, if you're actually going to compete with somebody, if like, say, UK is trying to make a colony, well then you have to start investing points, and they'll invest points, and you guys will end up fighting a war, maybe even over who's going to get that. It's going to do a crisis war, which we'll probably go over in another episode of Victoria 2 tutorials. But anyways, just so you know, colonial power, that's what you spend to make colonies. Kind of intuitive. So the second big thing about colonial power is that it's influenced directly by navy bases, and it's also influenced by your navy. So having big navy, having a lot of navy bases, that's going to be good. Having too much navy, making this number turn red, that is going to be bad. Red is bad. You know, it's not really that big a deal. You got it. So what are the major benefits of colonization, and why can colonization take a would-be like nobody, like kind of like Sardinia, Piedmont, but you know, not really. But how about Greece? Let's take a look at Greece and see how could colonization make Greece into a superpower. Well, first of all, these lands down here, when they first started the game, especially Egypt, will get in a bunch of wars with the Ottoman Empire. And at that point, it would be very advantageous as Greece or any of the other secondary powers to declare war and take over the Suez region, as we did. That's exactly what we did as Sardinia Piedmont. Before we were able to like form Italy to gain a little bit of extra power, we came down here and we claimed the Dumats region. Not only did that give us the Suez Canal later on, but in the meantime it actually has a pretty good population and it produces some good stuff. Over here you have salt and among other things. Tea also sells really well early game. And yeah, so colonies are great because it's just like a basically free land. And I don't think we ever had a revolt. There was never any colonial revolts. It's just more people to tax. And it's great. The colonies are great. There's also a bunch of like natural resources out here. As we'll take a look at these little like African guys to see. There's going to be plenty of like African wood, fruit, ridiculous amounts of RGO that's going to be awesome for you later on in the game, as well as just the population. The population is like really what gives a small nation the advantage when you do a lot of colonizing, because population leads directly to more troops, and more troops, basically military, is what controls this game. If you have a banging military, then there's nothing that can stop you. It doesn't matter if your industry is shitty, it doesn't matter if your prestige is low, as long as you have a badass military, you're going to be alright. And the perfect example of that is Russia. Now, Russia, we kind of beat them down a little bit, and they kind of get a bad rap. But Russia has one of the most massive militaries starting out in the game. They have the crappiest industry and some kind of crappy prestige. So, you just gotta look at Russia and see how good they did, and that's how you know that there's definitely, military is all that matters, because they had such low scores, and they still do very well. I don't think the whole time we were playing, I don't think Russia lost much land at all. They kind of look exactly the same, I'm pretty sure, at the end, and we'll take a look at that, that save game later. But anyways, like I said, that's how you can take a small country like Greece or Serbia or something like that, or even Belgium. It's just by colonizing you can get so much population, and the best place to do that is going to be in China. And that's what you see us doing here. We're Italian, Dynam. We're taking over these Chinese places because if you take a look, the population is so dense in China. It is so dense, and I think I could do a whole episode telling you why it's good to invade China and India because of this super awesome population. But that's basically the summary right there. I mean, look at that. There's 2.39 million people in just one province in China. Compared to that, over here in Italy, what's our most populous area? Almost 500,000. 500,000 is the most populous area that we can find. How about in London? London doesn't even have 1 million people. So that just gives you an idea of how awesome it is to have this much population under your grasp and ready to be made into soldiers. And that's why colonization is so awesome. I mean, what does it do? It basically makes any country better. If you're a small country, it can turn you into a giant country. If you're already a giant country like France or something like that, or Germany, UK, then it's going to make you into a massive country, just like even bigger than you could ever dream of. Colonization is the best, and that's why I was going to make this the second episode, is just because colonization is such an important part of Victoria 2, and it's such an important part of doing well, and it's also probably one of the most confusing things about it, because, everybody kind of knows how to fight with units, but colonization does not really explain it to you. Colonial power is tied to your navy. How would that doesn't even make sense really. I guess navy, kind of makes sense because you're controlling the seas. But I would think that if you had a big ass land border, that'd be good enough, right? Nope. That doesn't matter. It's all about navy. So now you guys know, and you guys can be super awesome colonizers in Victoria 2. I hope you learned something. Thanks so much for watching. Spray and pray out.